how do we create a workflow is how we are going to test it. If I just specify a step, so what is the testing approach going to look like? So step 1, you need to create a pet, right? And how you will create that? Via the post call. And you have step 2, verify pet is created successfully. Yeah, and you will do that via the get call. Yeah, you following me? Step 3, you want to update pet details. You will do via put call. And then you have to verify. So you have to verify as step 4, verify the pet details are updated. How you will do that? Again, you will do the get call here. Yeah. Now, step 5, what you want to do, delete pet details. And then how you will verify is, no, how you will verify, because you need to verify that that pet details are deleted, right? Then you have to do a get call to verify that pet information does not exist. So this is how your test case is going to look like. So what you're going to do, again, just to reiterate. So to test these, test the workflow of the pet information, you have to have a pet in the system. You will create a pet first. To verify the pet is created successfully, you have to do a get call for that given pet you have created. You want to update your pet details, you have to do via the put method. You have to verify that your pet details are updated, you will do a get call. Then you delete the pet details or you delete the pet itself information. Once deleted, you want to verify the pet information is deleted successfully. You will verify using the get call. This is how the flow is going to look like. And this flow remains the same for everything. Anything which you are testing, this is how in automation you have to write the steps. So steps should be, you create the information, then you verify the information is created successfully, you update that information, you verify the information is updated, you delete that information and verify the information is deleted successfully. That's how the workflow is going to be look like. So this is like a testing workflow for any API calls involving the CRUD operations. Yeah, CRUD is nothing but create, read, update, and delete. Yeah, so this is what the workflow looks like. Now going back to our pet information. So I will share this with you. Okay, so going back to our information, how do we rearrange what we have created here, right? So as we said, the first, what we want to do is create the pet, then this needs to be your first call. Yeah, so post needs to be first. Then what you need to do is verify, then it needs to be your second call, which is your get the pet details. Now third needs to be your put call, which is going to be this put call. Now fourth call needs to be your get call again, which is get by ID or get by whatever details we have. And the last one is your delete the pet details, which is a delete information. And then you can add one more You can duplicate actually the same call if it is you are using the same call again. You can duplicate the call, and then you can rename as. So you can rename these, just which makes it easy to understand, that get pet details after deletion. Yeah, so these are going to be your test cases. You can specify whatever description you want according to this information as well. Now the first step is, what we are doing is create a pet. So we already have some body information here. I will say send. So my bunny is created, and this is the ID I got, right? Now I want to verify, then I need to pass that as a pet ID here, send, and this bunny 6 is created. Yeah, there looks like that issue is just only in the Swagger. From here it is working. You got the bunny 6 which we created just now. Now take the response body, because we might need that to update the information. So take that response which you got from the get call, go to the put request, replace this information. And now what you want to say is, this is maybe pending. Whatever statuses are allowed from the Swagger page, that is going to be your statuses. So let's cross check what all pets statuses are available. So available, pending, and sold. So say I'm updating the status as pending. So send the call, and you see that status is now updated as pending. Now I want to verify that via the get call, because that put call might be, say, not correct. So I take my ID again, do a get call here, and then I verify that the bunny status is pending for this one. Now I can go and say delete my bunny information and send the get this delete call, and you can see that I got status 200, but I don't know whether it's deleted successfully or not. How do I confirm it? I do a get call again with that ID, and when I do send, I got pet not found, 404 not found. That means it is deleted in the system. Now, how do I write test? So my flow is working fine. I can run all the tests in sequence. But if you remember, I'm getting output from here, passing this in this response. So how do I make sure that I don't manually need to copy and paste this ID every time? In Postman, we have something called as a variables. You can store the information into the variables, and these variables are available on the, if you look on the right hand side on the top, this eye icon. What you can do is you can create your environments here and environment variables. So say, for example, if you have to run the same test across different environments, because in the actual companies, you must see the environments are like dev environment, test environment, and production environment, right? So if you have to run the same API calls across the environment, and you don't need to change the URL again manually, what you can do is you can define your environments. Either you can create from here, like say new environment, and you just give a name as whatever you want to give this environment name. Say, for example, say training environment 1. Yeah, you can define the variables here, if like that URL, this URL. If you don't want to use in here, what you can do is go to this training environment variables, edit it, and put this is like a URL. Yeah, and you can define values here. So there are two values. All it takes current values. Once you enter that, save it. How do you use this training environment 1 is always make sure when you're running test, you select your environment. And then when you go to this API call, instead of hard coding, you can use the variable which you have created. So you created URL as a variable, right? I can specify this variable here in the environment variables, and I can call it like this. So interview questions can come. How do you run the same API calls across different environments? So if you say you are doing automation via Postman, this is the way how you can define your different environments, and you can use those variables. So if it is your test environment one, you can create your other environments as well. Say, for example, you can training one. I need to, let me save it. Where is the, okay, I can't create from here. I can go from here as well. You can click on plus, and then you can define your new environment as, say, training environment 2, right? And you define your URL, and then it could be like a different URL, right? It could be like a pet store one, current value is like this. Yeah, you can have the, just make sure the environment variable name is same across the all the environments, because in your API calls, when you're using it, this is the variable you're calling. If you make it different, then it will be like a problem. You have to change this again and again. So variable name remains same, but you can change the value as per the environments from the environment variables. So now you don't need to change it every time. That is the first thing, how to define like reusable variables. The other thing what we discussed is adding the assertions. So you need to add, say you are sending a post call and you're expecting response 200. So you need to look at which script you can use. So status code 200, this is the script you can use because it's sending 200 response code. You can just add one small assertion here. The other thing, going back to the quick one, what we need to do, I'll just reuse existing steps which I've defined. As I mentioned, we are using this ID which is getting created with the pet creation, right? And you're using this ID into the next test, which is the get API call, the get pet details. How do you reuse that ID across the other API calls is, again, you can leverage or use the environment variables. So there are different environment variables where you can store these values into these environment variables. And the script is, again, you don't need to remember. There should be like a way where it says create the environment variables here. So set the environment variable. If you click on that, it is going to set your environment variables here, like whatever name you will specify. What will happen is it will create a variable name here and it will set the value. So the first is your variable name and second is your value, right? So what we are trying to extract from here is we want a pet ID, because pet ID we need for different calls. So what I can do here is, as you see, I created pm.environment.set. I give an ID as pet ID. And then what I'm fetching from the details is pet details.id. What is the pet details? Actually, I must have missed the response here. So what you need to do, if you remember, I mentioned that we need to read the response body. So how we are reading is, we are getting the response body, which is your this response body. It will get all this data into this variable. So this is how you define a variable. And JSON.parse, because this is a JSON response, you have to parse this response body and store into pet details variable. And out of this, what I am trying to read is only the ID, and I am trying to read the name of the pet. So what I have done, how do I read this JSON? Pet details.id, which is this one, and pet details.name is this bunny, because I need those details. If I hit this URL, you will see what will happen. My test, I have written one test, which is this one is passing. And after hitting this, if you go to this eye icon again, and you have selected this training environment, you see there are two variables got created, pet ID and pet name. how did it is created is, as I have said, these variables. So these two are the variables which are getting created on the execution of this API call, and it will store this value which is coming from the response. So you see here, storing this ID and this one. So there is an issue actually. There is an issue. It does not store. It's a Postman issue because it's a long number. So Postman does have issue in storing the long integers. It is not storing the correct value, as you can see. But in actual environments, that's how you will create a flow. Now, how do you use that pet ID instead of like hard coding? How do you reuse this pet ID? Is curly braces, and what is the ID variable is pet ID, right? That's what we need to use because I don't need to copy and paste every time. So if I do a get here, see, I got the bunny 6 as information. And the same thing I can do here is I can add an assertion. So if my test case fails, I know that it is going to be 200 as a status code. If it fails, my test will fail. Same way, if you go and update the pet information, in this case, what you need to pass is your ID again, right? So you can use which pet want to update, and then you can specify with what you want to update. So this is like, say you want to update as bunny 7, say for example, bunny 66 maybe, or 65. If you send this, you can see the bunny information is updated as 65. So what I have done is instead of hard coding this ID, I am reading it from the environment variables. You able to follow me, Bhargavi? Okay. Yeah. So you're just, instead of hard coding, what we are trying to do is passing this as a variable here. Now delete information. So same thing, will replace all the hard codings we have done with the variables, and which is coming from the environment variables. And those environment variables got stored from the first API call. And same will do here as well. Now it might not work for the entire thing. And in this case, you can add your custom status code as well. Like say, instead of this, status code is 404 because you expect that the response after the execution, this deletion, the data will not exist. So it should return 404 as expected. And it will match with the actual outcome as well. So now if you have to rerun this collection, ideally how it will happen is you go to this folder name. So as I mentioned, this is a collection name. You can run all the tests together. So click on that, go on the, click on 3 dots, click on run collection. It will show all the data. It will fail for this time. I'll tell you the reason. And then you can click on say run session. It will run all your tests in one go. Right now you see that it is failing. The 2 test cases are passing, create new pet and after deletion, because we don't find that pet. All other tests are like 4 on 4 not found, because as I mentioned, when this pet ID gets created, this is a big number. So if you look into this information, 213, it should actually store it. Yeah, pet not found, because right now it's looking for 213. So if I create it again, so this is 535. If I look at it, it will not update because that's like a bug in Postman. So you can go back, and if you execute any other test after that, it is going to work fine. But in actual environment, this is what we call as an automation, that you don't need to actually manually change everything every time. You just have a collection, you have all the API calls, you have all the test return, whatever you have identified, and you can run all the tests in one go by clicking on this run collection. So that is how the workflow is being defined. Do you have any questions on this?
Can you please go to the environments like
Yeah.
created, right? Like
Mm-hmm. 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 So so that's where, so you don't need to create. So what I have done, as I mentioned, so what we are doing is we are not creating those manually. What this command is doing, it is creating those variables on the fly, like it is creating dynamically when you're executing this call. So it will create these variables, as you can see. So if I just go and say delete these two, yeah, and I just save. So I don't have those two variables right here in the test environment. I only got one variable, which I've defined as a URL. So this is the only variable I got. Now, if I go here in the test, what I have defined is I am creating, so pm.environment.set. This command, it will create a variable as pet ID and pet name. This will only happen when I do a send, like I execute this API call. And also it is going to set the ID and the name as well. And from where it is coming is, it is coming from the response body. So when I execute this, I get the response. This is a response body. It will read this response, and out of that response I will read two um, properties here, ID and name. So what is ID? This is a first is ID. So what it will do, it will get the value of ID, which is this. It will get the value of name, which is this. So it will store pet ID as this number. So pet ID will be name of the variable, and this will be the value. Pet name will be the variable, and bunny 6 will be the value. So if I just show you again, there's nothing. If I go and say click send, and I go to the variables again, you can see that pet ID is created and pet name is created. Also, their values are stored. The only thing I was saying, this value is not matching with this one because that's a bug in the Postman. It's a big integer number. It does not store into the environment variables. That's why it does not work end to end. But you should be able to store your, create your variables on the fly and store the values, reading from the response. Mm-hmm. Oh, URL, no, URL, you have to specify. You can't create automatically because you need to know which environment you have to hit on, right? So this will be something you have to create manually for the URL, and then rest all other values you can put in from there, like from the response body, you are reading like other values. But the URL is the first thing you have to give for any environment because that's a server URL. You are not reading from anywhere. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So from this quickly, so we have discussed how to run a collection, how to run this entire workflow in a Go, how to create environment variables, and as well as how to write a small test using the test tab, and how do you see that results of the test which are executing. If it is failing, what is the expected and actual results, and then how to use these code snippet from the right hand side. I think that's pretty much it from the Postman side, which you need to understand as a basics. And I am happy to share more exercise if you want to try further on this one. But it will be, yeah, it will be good if you understand what the status code is. So I shared another document on the status codes. I did share the document which is theoretical to understand what the API in general looks like. So if you do read that about it and you do try these exercises, the Swagger is having issue, but as you can see, I'm able to do all the steps in the Postman. So try to create a collection in the Postman like this, and then you should be able to proceed. It will not stop you, creating all these steps what we have done just now. And also we discussed what are the environment variables are. So if you pretty much do a hands on this one, it'll be like a good learning and experience, because you got something to try and hands on as well. Any Yeah, so this is where you say you have written automation scripts for a sorry you have written API automation scripts via Postman. This is where we write these test scripts. So we put all the collections. So we create collections, we create all the API calls, we create the expected results here in the test tab. Then there are many more things you can do, like you can upload data via CSV, you can upload via JSON format. You're just doing one test right here. So if, say for example, you have to create 1,000 pets in a go, how you will do that? You would not want to manually go and change this, like say 1,000 times. Your approach is going to be a little different. So what you will do is, instead of creating like this, you will create either a with JSON format with 1,000 names, and then read that from different files. It could be JSON file, it could be the CSV as well. So when you run a collection, you see you have an option here. Select via this option when you are running the collections. It does allow you to select CSV and JSON format files, and then you can pass the data from there to the API calls.